and I said, where's everyone? But it looks like the crowd filled in pretty well. So glad everyone's here. I have quite a bit to get to, and my piece of paper is in my office. So we're going to wing it. I'm going to start with an MVP. MVP for the month of I believe it would be for July. And he happens to be sitting in the front row right now. So Killian, can you come up? I dream to have an applause like that someday for him. So we have such great candidates every month that sometimes we have to hang on to these, and someone who's so qualified. And this nomination came in earlier this year, probably in February. And the interesting thing is, I'm going to read it off to you, and it's from our Chief Financial Officer. But Killian just continues to go above and beyond with everything he does, that he actually deserves it even more every time as we get closer to July. So Killian recently transitioned into a new position at Fox Run. The position is IT Project Coordinator / IT Liaison. The job responsibilities of this position have already evolved, and while in general we knew that there was a need, we didn't know what the day-to-day would look like. Killian has embraced this position. He is available to all residents and staff with information technology needs, and has been the point person with respect to new projects that pertain to IT. Killian responds quickly and timely to all requests and has proven to work extremely well with Fox Run staff, vendors, specifically our consultant, and residents alike. I've witnessed his interaction with all of these parties, and not only is he friendly, but he's also very professional. And this, again, it's a little dated, but back on February 22nd and throughout that week, Killian assisted with the implementation of a change in Microsoft Outlook and has had to assist many employees through the process. He even came in to help an employee on a Saturday. That particular week, he was assisting with the installation of a new point-of-sale equipment system, and that's Volante. That's in our dining room. And on top of that, he's assisting with the coverage and maintenance. You still work in maintenance? Where's Matt? Killian has proven to be able to multitask and keeps both Matt and Jill in the loop as necessary. Killian's backup for triage of IT tickets and other IT needs he's been able to cover when people are out sick and covering maintenance when needed. I'm very proud of how Killian has embraced this new position. I'm also getting glowing reviews from our IT consultant about how much Killian is learning and doing well with the team. Thank you, Killian, for taking on this new role, and we're happy to have you as part of our team. So I hope this sums it up, but there's a global outage with Microsoft right now. I'm serious, and so all of our team of directors have been getting texts since about 6 a.m. Because our electronic medical record system is out because of it. And my very first response to our CFO / Chief Information Security Officer is Killian in today? Just make sure he's there, because I won't know what to do when people come asking me. So Killian, thanks for everything you do.
I really got to get back to filming this.
Oh yeah, get back to it.
Thank you, everyone.
Get back to filming. He really, I mean, honestly, we didn't know what the need was until he took over, and I don't know, we need two of them now, so thanks, Killian. Okay, so we had just last week was a crazy week. A lot happened. It started out very slowly, and I remember saying Tuesday, this might be the toughest week I've had at Fox Run in my 14 years. And it was only Tuesday. And it started with some issues with, I think it culminated when the town changed the code, the definition of what a half story is, and really we thought was going to ruin our project. And I said, the week can't get worse. And then the next day, the state walked in. And New York State walked in for our assisted living survey, the first one. Now, we're supposed to have these roughly about every 12 to 18 months. It was the first one we've had since 2019, since before COVID. And at the same time, one of our key staff members left Fox Run. So who was left to take over? Obviously, you have Allie, who's our administrator, but we had Dolly and we had Amanda. Could you both come up for stars? So first I'll tell you the survey went very well, and as I've said before, because I seem to only talk about skilled nursing, when the survey team comes in, it's so stressful, and you don't know what to expect. They're looking over your shoulder, they're demanding information, and they changed how they do it in assisted living to where it was much more intense and condensed into a two-day period. And when they walk in, it's a little bit of panic, but what do we do next? And I'll start with Amanda, and the first person I went to, sorry Matt, was I went right past Matt's office, and so you do an opening interview, and the team from the state tells you what they're looking for, and I ran right down the hallway in the maintenance area, and I went, Amanda, they're here, they want this, and this, and she pulls out this big fat binder, she goes, I've got it covered. So Amanda, you always have things under control, and I know it was new for you, and because it was new for all of us.
Right.
But you handled it very well, and we had a brand new surveyor who I think was just out of college, and she was very picky, and everything she was questioning, and Amanda was on top of it. So thank you for doing such a great job. And then of course there's Dolly. So it's a team of 4, and the lead person, every person except for Amanda's person, touched on something that Dolly needed to respond to. And Allie and I were sitting in these meetings, and even in the closing meeting, they started rattling off item after item, and sorry, Allie. Allie and I looked at each other like, what? What is she talking about? And Dolly's like, oh no, it's this and this and this, and I know this, and we're supposed to do it this way. And she was fantastic. And sometimes, unfortunately, you don't realize what you have until a moment of crisis like this. And Dolly, you really stood out. So thank you so much for everything you do. We really are blessed to have these two. And again, time of crisis, they both stood out. And the results were excellent. So we did have some minor things which they have to find something. But all in all, it was a good survey for us. So be ready next year when they come back. Did you want to say anything?
How can you back this?
Thank you. Okay, what's next? I don't have my list. I did get a request from Mary Wellington. She's looking for volunteers in our health center. She's looking for volunteers to just come up and visit with a resident. And hey, sometimes they don't have someone to talk to. They don't have a lot of family coming to visit. And they just need to have a conversation. Not looking for companion services or any sort of work, but if you're interested in just checking in with Mary and just spending an hour, spending some time, take a resident outside, sit on the front porch in the sun and just have a conversation, we would love that because there is a need. And these are your neighbors and they could just use a good listening ear. Yes, Peg?
If anyone wants to team, and it's kind of uncomfortable sometimes, or you haven't been up there, I would be glad to go with anybody.
That's a fantastic idea, because sometimes it's difficult if you don't know the person or the environment's not comfortable for you. It is, it can be intimidating, but if you have somebody with you, it's like a long car drive. You don't want 2 people, you want 3, because it's easier to have conversation and there's a lot more to talk about.
Sometimes what they need is no conversation, holding a hand, just being there. It's so needed and it's so meaningful.
It absolutely is, and thank you, Peg, for checking it. It is needed. And Peg is well, excuse me?
Couldn't hear.
I'm repeating it. Peg's points were spot on. Sometimes it's not even conversation; it's just being there. And thank you for volunteering. So if anyone is not comfortable, go with the team effort. Mary Wellington will absolutely coordinate it for you. So check in with Mary first, and she'll pull it all together because we could use some friendly faces. Yes.
I think sometimes people are a little apprehensive about going to the memory care unit if you haven't been there. But believe me, it's a treat to go there. And they have a lovely garden where you can sit outside. And I was just thrilled when I went there the first time. So that's another possibility.
Yes, memory care is a beautiful unit. They have the nicest patio, and just, again, another great opportunity to just go and sit with somebody outside and just really enjoy. The gardens are beautiful, they really are. Yes, Alona.
I just quickly, is it all 3 units, assisted, skilled, and memory that they need?
So everyone needs company. I would say all 3 units. Mary was specifically asking for skilled nursing. But yes, if you're interested in just going to memory care, as was suggested, please do so. But again, Mary Wellington is your point person. Lisa, would you like to come up and make an announcement?
Good morning. I have a couple of things for us today. First, I just want to go over some events that are coming up. We have our garden party next Thursday, 25th. Ideally, it's going to be in the garden, weather pending. Even if it is raining, we have backup plans, so it will still be on rain or shine. Just might be a location change. But what that is, it's going to be a really nice event. Sign up at the hostess stand. We will have hors d'oeuvres, we'll have a really nice 4-course meal, we'll be cooking right on the grill at the pavilion, and again, rain or shine, we'll have the same menu, we'll just change the venue, it'll still be beautiful. But there's still some spaces, so feel free to sign up. It is $40 off of your decline, so for those of you who are losing or building up, it's a great opportunity to try something new. So come on down for that. The golf outing, you should have received a flyer in your mailbox that looks like this paper that I can't unfold. It looks like this. This is Aaron's 2nd annual golf outing, so that'll be a good day. It's going to be on August 14th. It includes 9 holes, lunch, prizes. It'll be a good time. Sign up with Nicole and Activities if you would like to go. I did get one question that was, is this only for men? And no, it's not, it's for everybody. So ladies, get your gloves and you can go too, okay? The bar. So we did do the survey for the 2 days versus 3 days. It actually was pretty even, a few more 2 days. But we are going to, through the summer, keep it open for the 3, and we're going to revisit in September. So it'll continue to be the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we'll revisit in September. Along with that, I just wanted to remind everybody that we are a food service establishment and we are monitored, so we cannot bring in outside snacks and food to share with other people. It does become a little bit of an issue for us. So please don't bring in things from the outside. We're gonna, when the bistro is open, feel free to order food from the bistro, and I'm gonna get some more snacks and different options to purchase at the pub so that we have that option, because I understand why you want something to eat while you're enjoying your drinks. But just try not to bring in snacks to share with community members, because we could have issues with Department of Health and things like that for that. Okay? And the last thing to mention is that Chris has left us and has moved on to a different opportunity. He's our executive chef.
The chef?
Yes, the chef has left. So, yes, he's gone. So he wanted to, or he's moving on to a different place. It's great for him, but we are going to be looking for a new chef. You shouldn't notice anything in your day-to-day, just didn't want you to be reaching out and not getting a hold of him. So if you need anything, please reach out to myself or Aaron, and you'll always see Keith around as well, who's a great resource. Okay?
That's sad.
That happens, right? He's young. Can't plan on everybody staying forever.
No.
It'd be nice. But, all right, I think that's all I have.
Just know that we are in good hands because our former executive chef, who is our current director of dining services, is our current executive chef in Chris's absence. So, very talented chef in her own right. Okay, just let's see very quickly. I had sent a letter out and put a memo in everyone's mailbox about a week ago talking about giving gifts. And not only did all of our residents get this letter, get a memo, but so did our staff. And typically you see a letter like this and everyone's first reaction is, oh no, what have I done? Or it's terror. Sometimes things happen. We had a situation that we had to address, and I'm going to be very vague, but when you have a situation like that, you have to cover all bases, and you send out a blanket memo to everyone. The purpose of the memo wasn't for you to stop giving cookies or candy or snacks to staff. I love cookies, so please don't stop doing that. The purpose was something much larger. Your financial information is your financial information. Keep it out of the hands of staff. Don't cross-pollinate. Don't give out significant gifts to people. Or it's not. We do this for a reason. This is why we don't accept tips, and this is why we have the Employee Appreciation Fund. So just know that there was a significant event, and we've handled it, and we've moved forward. But it wasn't meant for all of you to stop engaging with or giving little treats and snacks. But you really shouldn't give monetary gifts to anyone, even if it's their last day or they're leaving. It's very important not to do that. So that's all I'll say, and I'll answer any questions, but that's all I'm really going to say at this point on that topic. The other thing, I alluded to how awful last week was in the beginning of the week. Thursday came around, and then of course we had day after day of something significant, and then we rolled right into the Orchard Park Town Planning Board meeting, and I was expecting the worst. And what happened was a spectacle in a good way. So just picture this, those of you who weren't there. The Town Planning Board meetings usually have about 4 people in the audience. We had approximately 80, and most of them were you. So thank you so much for all of your support, but the unthinkable happened. I assumed we're going to get bad news. They changed our code, which would absolutely wipe out our project. And so we went forward with the planning board meeting anyway, and we did a little presentation, and it was a public hearing, and they asked for public comments. And one after another, all of you stepped up. Probably about a dozen people spoke on behalf of Fox Run and our project. And what all of you said was wonderful. And everybody said something a little different. You had your own twist on why Fox Run is important to you and why the project you think is a good idea. What was even more shocking was the town supervisor, who in 14 years has never once gone to the microphone to comment on the project, went up in support of our project. And the village mayor, who just said the best thing ever, she said, I'm tired of people from Orchard Park moving to Canterbury Woods. We need more of Fox Run. It was wonderful, it really was. And, Dean Beeler, whose parents have their name above our Oak Room, spoke as well. It was such a wonderful event that it took all the stress so that we can just lift it. I felt really light, and people were hugging and high-fiving, and many of you went up and thanked the board. The board, I've heard through the grapevine, one board member said, I've never seen anything like this. Now, their job isn't easy. They have projects and people who are pushing the envelope and pushing limits, so their job is tough. It was nice for them to have a feel-good moment like they had as well. So it was a wonderful outcome, so we were given our blessing to move forward. The next step is the August 7th full board meeting. I'm told it's a rubber stamp, and it's going to take about a minute, so I'm not worried there. And then we're on to the next hurdle, which is New York State, so which could take a long time. But I just want to say thank you to all of you who attended. It was really, the outpouring was so significant for the planning board that they skipped a step and they gave us their final approval, because technically we were supposed to do this again in August, but now we get to go to the full board. So it was, thank all of you. I don't know the date yet, but we're going to do a free happy hour with hors d'oeuvres for everyone, just to say thank you for attending and just really supporting, not just Fox Run, but supporting all of us who are really trying hard to get this project rolling. Any questions? Yes?
Was it James Brunner that wrote the lengthy thing that people were asking
Yeah.
for comments on.
So, yes, and thank you for saying that. It's gonna be in it's gonna be the cover of our newsletter for August. So just to take, I'm really sorry to our speaker, I'm taking so long, I told you 10 minutes. But Jan read her David Letterman top 10 list, and it was really entertaining because she was going through it and everybody loved it, and she got to about number 5, and the town attorney, who said everyone has only 2 minutes, yells out, 30 seconds! So Jan, I can't believe you were like an auctioneer, you started talking so fast, and you got the rest of it out. And then one of the board members asked for a copy of it. So that was wonderful. So I'll publish it in this month's newsletter. So thank you, all of you. Any resident announcements? Okay, so it's my pleasure to finally get to our very patient speaker, but I'm going to introduce the introducer first. So Judy Wiedemann, can you come up, please?
Truly, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Mary Marina Kozer, Director of Education at the Birchfield Penny Arts Center. I've had the privilege of coming to know Mary and be instructed by her as a docent at the Birchfield Penny. Previously to working at Birchfield Penny, Mary was an art teacher for 36 years in the Akron school system, and for many of those years she was department chair. Her education, her higher education, started at Buffalo State. She received a Master of Fine Arts degree from SUNY Buffalo, and she also attended Canisius, now Canisius University. Many of you in the audience, I know about Charles Birchfield, a very noted watercolor artist who lived for many years and died, as a matter of fact, while he was living in Gardenville, New York. But not so many of you know very much about the other person who shares the name of that art center on Elmwood Avenue, and that is Charles Brand Penny. Mary will tell you about this other Charlie. Mary?
Take the mic.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today. And can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, great. And thank my friend Judy for that lovely introduction. I'm happy to be here and really delighted to talk about my friend Charlie Penny. I only knew him for 2 years, very sadly, before he died. I came to the Birchfield Penny Arts Center in 2008, and he died in 2010. But I did make this one promise to Charlie Penny that I pretty much have kept throughout my experience there at the Birchfield Penny Arts Center, and that is to share that he was not associated with J.C. Penney's, which he was not. And we're going to learn a little bit about who he was. And I thought we would start with his grandfather, Thomas Penny, who was just a remarkable man. He was born in London, England, and traveled to America on his own at the age of 14. He, of course, ended up in Ellis Island and spent 3 days in New York asking around, knowing full well that he wanted to become a lawyer. And so he found out that the best venue, the best way to get to that ultimate goal was to go to this private school. He talked his way into it. It was a boarding school, no funds, no parents, no friends. no background, but talked his way into boarding school by working in the morning and in the afternoon and in the evenings when he wasn't attending class, and graduated from there. He went on to Yale University and ultimately, I'm just going to get my pennies correct, went and received a law degree. So that's his remarkable grandfather. He became a lawyer, and you may or may not know that he was the prosecuting attorney in the McKinley assassination trial. I can never remember how to pronounce the assassin's name. It's Chaogoff. Did I get it sort of close? He was the district attorney in Buffalo, New York, and of course his fame grew through that particular case. It was such a noted case. There it is. This is the very last known image of President McKinley. He was shot in the Temple of Music. I'm sure you all know this story, by this young man who actually was from Michigan, had been laid off at his job, and was very angry. He was a socialist himself. There we go. Thomas Penny, died at the age of 74, and he is buried in Forest Lawn. This is a picture of his grandmother, Cecilia Elizabeth Patterson Penny. So remember the name Patterson, because that will show up again. And she is also buried at Forest Lawn, and she died at the age of 85. Here's his father, Charles Patterson Penny, and he was also a lawyer. He actually got his law degree from Harvard and died at the age of 75. And I could not locate a picture of Gretchen Rand Penny, his mom, but I do know that she died at 59 and is also buried at Forest Lawn. But who are the Rands? Because the Rands are the other part of the big family. And they, of course, are the parents of Gretchen Rand Penny. So let's look at them. George Franklin Rand and Vina Sophia Fisher Rand were his parents. They died very young, very sadly. His grandfather died in a plane crash when he was traveling from Paris to London, and his grandmother died, I believe, of cancer. And so it was a very sad story. But they, I just want to go back a little bit too. There he is. He was also a remarkable man. They were born in North Tonawanda. At the age of 16, he dropped out of school and he became a teller at the local bank. And somehow or another, and I wasn't able to figure it out, he was able to amass $50,000, which is an enormous sum at the time, being a teller. I'm not really sure how. I wish I could tell you how that happened. But he started Marine Trust. And Marine Trust was a bank in Buffalo that catered particularly to the merchant marine sailors, who so many of which took off from the ports in Buffalo. And he made his fortune by thinking about branching out. He actually thought it would be a good idea to set up branches throughout what was the suburbs today, but was the rural area surrounding Buffalo, and he amassed a huge fortune. He eventually merged with New York Trust and became the Marine. I love this, Marine Midland. I just love that name because Marine, we're surrounded by water in this region, Midland, because we're in the middle of the land. And such a remarkable story. He was so wealthy that he was in the process of building this beautiful home, which is, do you recognize that building?
Yes.
Yes, Canisius High School today, when both he and his wife died. So they never actually lived in the building, but it's my understanding that the children did move into it for a very short time. But of course, it was just a very sad time for the family, losing both parents in a very short time. They had properties all over the place. Mr. Penny was able to go to Alcott Beach, and this is a place that they had on Niagara-on-the-Lake called Landwood. They also had a home in Ellicottville. So he was really quite a indulged young man. Here's the beautiful Randwood on Niagara-on-the-Lake. There we go. And there he is. He was not born Charles Rand Penny. He was actually born Charles Patterson Penny Jr. And he was born July 26th in 1923 in Buffalo, New York. He changed his name at some point in time. He was actually an adult when he changed his name because he really did not get along with his father, but he adored his mother. And so he decided to honor her and his relationship with her by officially changing his name to Charles Rand Penny. He attended Elmwood Normal School, which is now merged with Franklin Normal School and has become the Elmwood Franklin School. But that's where there was a kindergarten at the time. He went on to Nichols School, and then he was sent to a boarding school, the Hotchkiss Boarding School in Connecticut. And ultimately went on to Yale University, also in Connecticut. He was a freshman in college when what happened? World War II broke out when Pearl Harbor was bombed, and of course it changed the course of his life in many ways, as it did so many people living in America at the time. He came to Buffalo, he filled out all of his information so that if he needed to be drafted, they would have that. He went back to Yale, and he actually joined a military tactics group while in Yale, thinking that would prevent him to being not enlisted, but drafted. And so he went on, and he was called into active duty. And because he already spoke German, and he spoke French at the time, he thought he would like to learn Chinese, because they were offering him all sorts of possibilities for different types of training. So he went on to learn Chinese. It took a year for him to really master the Mandarin language. And he was sent first to India, in Calcutta, India, and then moved on into China. And in China, he was kind of doing some counterintelligence. He was part of a unit that eventually became the CIA. At the time, it was not called the CIA, but he did counterintelligence. He sort of moved around the Chinese people. China was our ally at the time, and he was trying to see if there was any sort of discourse that would suggest that they were moving in a different direction. Ultimately, he was sent first to Shanghai, China, and then eventually he moved to Busan, Korea, where he was charged with, I'm not quite sure how this happened, but charged with disarming the Japanese that were still in Korea at the time. And he did walk away with one sword, which, you know, he was a collector, and so that was a really interesting point, I thought. He came back, he finished his degree at Yale, and then he went on to the University of Virginia Law School and received his law degree. He passed both the Maryland Law Bar and New York State Bar, but he elected to come back to Buffalo and work at the very famous law firm of Penny & Penny. He got a taste for traveling through this. And I'm just listing here all of the countries that he visited in his life. That experience in the Army really helped him to see that the world was much bigger than Buffalo, New York, or Connecticut, and it gave him the opportunity or that taste for travel. And he spent much of his life traveling all around the world. So who is he? Well, he's a lawyer. He's a linguist. He ultimately spoke 6 different languages. He was an avid sailor. He said he knew every single square inch of Lake Ontario. He actually owned 2 sailboats. One he kept in Toronto and one he kept in Olcott. So he did a lot of travel sailing. He was a sports car enthusiast. He said he just couldn't get a fast enough car. My husband asked me if he actually raced, and I couldn't find anything suggesting that. But he did say he loved fast cars. He was an educator, and if I don't get back to that, please remind me to circle back around to why I called him an educator. But above all else, he was a collector, and he collected so many things. And I love this little picture. It's a painting by Sally Cook. It's called Charles Rand Penny in his growing collection. And you can see way up at the top a Birchfield painting. It's a really important thing. But what did he collect? He collected all sorts of things. He had over 100 different collections. You can see some of them here. Here is a Henry Moore. He owned 2 Henry Moore sculptures, Devonshire china. He loved the little dog porcelain pieces. He was just an avid collector, so let's talk about some of his collections. Oh, there he is. I love that picture. He's sitting there with his collections. He collected, they kind of fell into these categories: contemporary painting and sculpture, folk art, antiques, memorabilia from the World's Fairs, and 20th century American art, and that includes, of course, the beloved Charles Birchfield. His collecting really came in 2 different directions. First, from his mother, who had kept this beautiful home in Buffalo that was filled with antiques, and he said when they traveled back and forth to Connecticut, they did that a lot, getting him to boarding school and then getting him to Yale and back. His mother would stop along the way at all the different antique stores. He said his mother made the selections, his father haggled with the people, and were able to get some of the items that she owned. She did own Audubon prints. I put Robert Blair's picture here. This is an image that was one of the many, many works that he gave to the Birchfield Penny Art Center. I put it here because Robert Blair, you may be familiar with him, he's quite a well-known Buffalo watercolor artist. He was his religious education teacher, and he gave him a little tiny drawing that Mr. Birchfield, or excuse me, Dr. Penny kept for his whole life. And the drawing was of sort of a warrior with a great big sword and a shield. And it was a metaphor for fascism, because Robert Blair was very worried about the rise of fascism in the world at that time. But that little work of art, Charles Birchfield, I keep saying Charles Birchfield because I talk about him mostly, Charles Penny kept for his whole entire life. This beautiful work by Charles Birchfield belonged to his mother and was in their home as he grew up. And he talked about how he looked at Charles Birchfield's work and he just didn't get it. He just couldn't figure out what Charles Birchfield was saying in this work. So what do you think he's saying in this work? Anyone want to venture a guess, or what do you think you're looking at? Charles Birchfield it's called Telegraph Music. He's so remarkable because he was one of the first artists to paint the senses, and in this case he's painting sound. So you can hear how the sound going through the telegraph pole almost looks like little ears. But for those of you that know the language of Birchfield, you might know that that's also a sign of fear. You could see how the sound is just being pumped through the wires. Those little shapes are both the sound, but also representing a wind harp, the idea that nature plays its own music without man's hand being present. And this weird little thing on the side is Charles Birchfield's personal fear. He was afraid of the wildcat, the lynx that loomed around Ohio when he was growing up. The little bluebird is the bluebird of happiness. So he's telling us that he has sort of mitigated that fear. And up above, you can almost smell the fear. He's corralled it. The bluebird is not afraid. So Charles Birchfield overcame some of his fears. And Charlie Penny lived with this painting. The painting now, it's actually up in our museum today, so you can come see it. It's just a little tiny painting, but it's something that he mused over while he grew up. Martha Visserhoff was another artist whom he collected and donated to our work. She lived, you may know, she lived in the Hamlin house. She was a Hamlin growing up, and she and her husband, he was an ambassador, lived there. And he wanted this Martha Viserholt so badly that he actually went and negotiated with her a price. And he said that oftentimes he was willing to make payments on the works of art that he bought. He had over 100 collections, and here they are, some of them. He knew exactly where everything was. They were all cataloged and stored. And where does one keep 100 collections? He had over 100,000 objects. So where does one keep them? He rented 2 floors of the Bewley office building in Lockport, New York, and there he actually lived with his collections. It was an office building, so he took one of the offices, he put a single bed in it and a single chair, and then he would go to the bathroom down the hall in the office bathroom, and he would walk to the Y in order to shower every day. So he was really kind of a quirky guy. Where did the collections go? Here are the list of all the places the collections went to. I added the Birchfield Art Center, which it was called at the time. So he was really mindful that he never had children, he was never married, that when he died he needed a home for each of those collections, and he was very thoughtful about where they ended up being placed. Some of the strange collections were, you can see here, he collected hotel coat hangers, Mr. Peanut hats, which we saw right in the first picture, and he had the great big ones that people wore and walked around with. He had also little tiny ones that you crank up and they walk around. He had hundreds of Mr. Peanut hats. He had the chalk figures, you know, those great big weird chalk figures that you used to get at carnivals, and also the carnival canes. He had all sorts of carnival canes. But I think the weirdest one was barbed wire. He had something like 2,200 different types of barbed wire. I didn't even know that existed. Because of his connection to the Pan American Exposition, where President McKinley died and his grandfather came into great fame, he collected many Pan American Exposition memorabilia, including this beautiful painting by the Buffalo painter Evelyn Romsey Carey, which became the poster for the Pan American Exposition. Here's just a little snippet of the shelf with the Pan American Exposition materials. He collected New Guinea masks and art and crafts from there. He also collected African masks. He collected quilts and rugs. He had the largest collection of prints of Niagara Falls. They went to the Castellani. But what did he give the Birchfield, and why is his name on the building? Well, he gave us 3 huge collections, 4 if you count the archives. He gave us 1,485 objects. It was just an enormous gift. Out of that, there were over 180 works by Charles Birchfield. He had the largest collection of works by Charles Birchfield, larger than any museum even. He collected, this is examples of works by other regional artists, and you may or may not know that it was Charles Birchfield's idea to have a museum that included all of the area artists. Charles Birchfield was a very humble man, and it actually took 5 years to convince him that we should have a museum in his name. Charles Birchfield was the most recognized American artist in the 1930s and 40s. He was the first artist to have a solo show at the Museum of Modern Art. He had huge exhibitions at every major institution, and he is collected by every major institution. Unfortunately, everybody doesn't know his name the way we do, because, want to take a guess why? Because he worked in watercolor and they were very fragile. And so Charles Penny, gave his collection of Western New York artists to our institution. He also gave works of art and craft media. This is one piece he gave us. It's an umbrella stand. It's all carved. The whole thing is a trompe l'oeil. It fools the eye. It looks like a real umbrella stand with a real umbrella. It is not. It's a sculpture done by the famous furniture designer, Wendell Castle, and then Stephen Merritt did this beautiful ceramic piece. He gave us his Roycroft collection. So when they were dismantling the Roycroft Inn and everybody was selling off the Roycroft work out in East Aurora, he scooted out there and did a significant purchase of those items. And so he gave us that collection as well. This beautiful piece called Lightning and Thunder at Night actually was given to the Smithsonian. So we do not own it. So he did give some of his works to other institutions. But I want to show you now the work he gave to us. Just a snippet of it. 184 of these works to the Birchfield Penny Art Center. So this is a self-portrait by Charles Birchfield. Early spring. I hope that's not me. Is that me?
No.
Oh, good. This is the painting we believe Charles Birchfield was working on when he died. The museum opened in December of 1966, and in January of 1967, Charles Birchfield died of a heart attack. So he really didn't give us a lot of paintings. We just weren't in existence for very long. But of course, Dr. Penny filled that gap in for us. The reason he's a Dr. Penny is because he was honored with an honorary doctoral degree from what was Buffalo State College at the time, because of this incredible and significant gift. So this is the last work that he gave us called Poplar Trees. He held on to this for quite a while. This is one of, we think 18 or 19, we're not quite sure, oil paintings that Charles Birchfield did. He knew that his legacy really rested on his ability to convert from watercolor to oil. But unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, it wasn't his medium. He said when he worked in watercolor, it was as easy as breathing, but it was very laborious to work in oil. This is a painting of a real fire that happened in West Seneca. It's the only painting that Charles Birchfield did on site in real time. This is called Haunted Twilight. It's a memory of being a kid out in Ohio. Clear in the Sky, New Moon in January, one of my favorite paintings called December Light, which really talks about man's hand on nature. If you look in the foreground, you can see the trees have been taken down and turned into some kind of pavilion, and up above, the animals have been killed and stuffed and hung there, where in the background, nature is just enjoying life without this destruction of mankind. This is probably the largest and maybe the most valuable painting that Charles Penny gave to us. It's called Solitude. Whoops, excuse me, a little technical difficulty. And I want you to just look at those dates, 1918, 1944, 1965. Did those dates resonate with anybody? Wars, right? So World War I, World War II, and then the Vietnam conflict. And so you might also be able to detect some faces that are showing up in the wall. Yeah, it's really quite a remarkable painting. The 1918 is in parentheses because he originally thought of the idea, or perhaps he did destroy some work in 1919, Charles Birchfield. And so that work might have been gone, but the concept started in 1918, and then he worked on it in 1944 and again in 1965. Oops. I'll go backwards. So this work was actually a promised gift to the Whitney Museum of Art. They never called Charlie Penny back. And so he was so annoyed, he decided they weren't going to get it after all. He was sort of a persnickety guy. I spoke to him every Thursday at 3:30. For 2 years, I called him every Thursday at 3:30. I couldn't call at 4:25 and get an answer, and God forbid I called at 4:35, you really wouldn't answer. I had to call him right at that moment, and we would talk about the works of art that were currently up that he had contributed and how our guests were responding to that work. And it really gave him great joy to know that he had gifted this work to us. His original intention was not to give the Birchfields to the Birchfield Penny Art Center, but rather to send it out west, because he really felt that the rest of the world needed to know about Charles Birchfield in the same way that we do. But we're so grateful that he changed his mind and made the gift to us, and now we own these beautiful works of art. I put this up here because he did not really know Charles Birchfield well. He did visit him, he did go to his home, they did have a very cordial relationship, but they weren't friends. And he did not buy the work from Charles Birchfield directly, he bought it through the Wren Gallery. And I think that really speaks to both gentlemen's sort of their integrity. Mr. Birchfield had signed a contract with the Wren Gallery, and he honored that commitment. And so the works were purchased through the Wren Gallery. There's a wonderful, like if you know that we own 10,000 journal entries by Charles Birchfield, it's just a remarkable archives. Like buried in that archives, I found a little snippet where he mentions Dr. Penny. And he said, Charlie Penny finally bought enough works that I could buy my first Buick. Dr. Penny talked about how modest Mr. Birchfield lived. He just lived, you might be familiar with his home. It's right on Clinton Street near William. And he was just kind of thrown. I mean, he grew up in this really grandiose Gilded Age era living, and hearing that this famous artist who lived in a very modest home, a clapboard home on Clinton Street. It's just a really interesting, I always wanted to write a children's book, Meet the Two Charlies, but I haven't been able to do that. So along with Birchfield, Edward Hopper and Reginald Marsh were represented, along with John Marin. It was a very avant-garde, at the time, gallery. And I love this painting of Dr. Penny, and there he is with one of the paintings he donated to us. This is a painting of Charles Birchfield's studio. This was done by the late artist Bruce Adams. And this is the opening of our center. The man standing next to Dr. Penny. Dr. Penny's in a wheelchair. The man standing next to him is Arthur Birchfield. And you can see, if you look back to Charles Birchfield, how remarkably alike they look, and how happy Dr. Penny was. And there he is, Dr. Penny. So I didn't get back to the education part of it, which I do want to share. He took these Birchfield works and would go to schools that were in rural areas, and he would bring the works with him. And then he would suggest that they empty out the trophy cases and put the works in the trophy cases so that they could be locked up. Some of the smaller works. The larger works would go into the library, because libraries generally got locked at night before the school librarian went home, and he would share his work with children. Which, when you think of the value of these works, and he understood what the value was, it's truly a remarkable story. So I was told to stay short, and I did my best. And so, I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions you might have. Did anyone know Dr. Penny? You can share your impressions of him. I will tell you one funny story, and I'm not patting myself on the back. It's just kind of who he was. So he came into the museum and he wanted to look at some work. He was in a wheelchair at that time, and he had an escort with him, and some staff members were going down to greet him, and he just went, I am here to see the artwork, not to mingle with the staff. And then as I rounded the corner, just as I'm hearing this, I go, gosh. He went, Mary, call me on Thursday, 3:30. Okay, Dr. Penny, I'll be happy to do that. And so really, it wasn't me. It was really my ability to share with him what our guests were seeing and how much they were enjoying the tremendous gift that he gave us. I did bring along, if anyone is interested, the list of artwork that Charles Penny gave to the Birchfield. If you're interested in having a copy of this and you could really have a chance to use over it, I have a number of copies for you. Just let me know.
Mary, we do have a bit of time for questions from the audience.
Yes, ladies.
That is such a beautiful building, and I sometimes wonder how many of the people here have been to the Penny. But right now, on the second floor, there is one of the most beautiful exhibitions. It's a private collection of Judy and Mr. Lipsky. It is a collection of glass, blown glass, very unusual, and it is really, really worth seeing. And we're so lucky to have it here.
Yeah, and it is, it has been given to the Virtual Penny Art Center, so it does belong, it is now in our collection. Some of the works are going back to Judy, they're promised gifts, she just wants to live with them a while longer, but they will come back to us if you. The show, half of the show is coming down, so if you want to see the full show, you've got to get there fast. Half will be remaining up and some will be put in the showcases, but it will forever belong to the Virtual Penny Art Center. Thank you for mentioning that. And the building is beautiful. I don't know if you know Bill McGavin, another famous lawyer in a big law firm. He made the first contribution of $1 million if we would move from Rockwell Hall to the building that we're in. So we owe a lot to Bill McGavin. Any other questions?
McGavin?
Yes. Bill McGavin.
Is his house in Gardenville still there?
Charles Birchfield's? Yes, it is there. And there are two houses. The Gardenville house is privately owned, and so you can't tour it. The studio has actually been transformed into a bed and breakfast, or a B&B bed and breakfast. So you could rent it. So you could spend the night in the studio, but the home is privately owned, so you can't enter that. However, Charles Birchfield's home in Salem, Ohio is a house museum, and so I encourage you to visit it and to go to Salem and see where he grew up and the valleys that he played in and the town that he tromped through, because so many of those images that you'll see exist in paintings, many of which we own. Any other questions about either of my friends?
Yeah, Janet?
Excuse my ignorance. Maybe I'm just too young for all this. But anyways, how did he become famous? Who found him and how did that happen?
We're not 100% sure, but I have two stories to share. We're talking about Charles Birchfield, right? So Charles Birchfield, when he was 5 years old, his father died. They lived in Ashtabula, Ohio. He was the fifth of 6 children. They moved to Salem, Ohio because his mom, I mean, could you imagine a woman in the 1800s with 6 children and no means of support? So she moved to Salem where 2 of her brothers lived, and they bought the house for the family to live in. He was very smart. All the children made art from the time they were little, and they sold calendars and greeting cards all around Salem to bring some money in, because she was so afraid that she'd have to literally farm her children out. She didn't want to do that, trying to keep her kids together. So all of the children made art. And Charles Birchfield, he was very smart. He was the valedictorian of his class, and his teachers understood how brilliant he was, and they pulled money and got him whatever the scholarship, full scholarship to the Cleveland Institute of Art, but they also helped. Today, the Salem High School is the most endowed high school because that legacy has lived on. So he went on to college. When he graduated, he worked as a clerk back in Salem, but he got a job in Buffalo designing wallpaper at the Burge & Sons Wallpaper Factory. Remember, Buffalo was a booming city at the time, the Queen City. And the wallpaper company was a high-end wallpaper company. And so it had offices in London, Chicago, New York, but its home was in Buffalo, New York. And he worked there for 9 years. Oh, I skipped over him. So he worked there for 9 years. But in the meantime, after high school, he did go on to graduate school in New York City. It did not go well for him. He didn't like it. It's believed it has to do, well, the bustle of New York after being in these smaller cities and small town was a little much for him. But they think it was life drawing, and he wasn't used to seeing nudes and drawing down. He just couldn't adjust. It took 2 weeks for his brothers to earn enough money to get him back home again. During that time, he met some women who owned a salon, and he became friends with them. It was called the Turnwise Down, I believe. And he remained friends with them his whole life, and they showed his work. And so his work was in New York. Now, in the meantime, Conrad Goodyear was head of the Albright Knox Art Gallery, the Albright Art Gallery, and he was fired for buying a Picasso. And so he went on to be the first director of the Museum of Modern Art. Charles Birchfield was in the first show at the Museum of Modern Art, along with Matisse and many other, Picasso, and Birchfield was included. So was it that Conrad Goodyear saw the work in New York that was at the studio, or was he familiar with him from his time in Buffalo? We really don't have a good answer to that. But he was definitely the first artist to have a solo show at the Museum of Modern Art. And that really launched his fame. After 9 years at the Wallpaper Factory, he quit and became a full-time artist. He was convinced that he could do it, and he did. And as I showed through the Rennie Gallery.
Good question, Janice.
Yes.
Thank you for that. At the beginning of the presentation, I told you that Mary is head of education at the Birchfield Penny. She educates on a daily basis and did great education for us this morning. So I thank you, Mary, with these 2 token bags. One from Fox Run, so that he will continue to remember us, and then another little, it was a great treat to have you here this morning.
First of all, just giving a shout out to my friend Judy, who is a terrific docent, as you probably can imagine. And then somebody who you might know, Jane Roubaix, who is no longer with us, but she certainly, she was one of the first, she was in my first docent class at the Birchfield Penny Art Center. And of course, I remember her fondly. If you knew Jane, you know she was an avid reader. And she had this idea, too, that we should read the books that Charles Birchfield read, which really started our book club at the Birchfield Penny Art Center. We then shifted from reading the books Birchfield read to reading books by regional authors, because that is our mission. And Nancy Weekly, the Birchfield scholar, took Jane's list and has continued to add to it. So every time we come across any sort of little bit from one of those journal entries or anywhere else, we add to the list of books that Charles Birchfield read, because he was an avid reader just like Jane, and so we owe her that great debt. So I just want to give a shout out to my friend Jane, who's no longer with us.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend, everyone.